The creator and former showrunner of X-Men 97, Beau DeMayo, has been on the warpath against his former employer ever since he was unceremoniously canned before the release of the first episode of his incredibly well-received show. I don't think it's controversial to say it is the best, most faithful, albeit sparsely watched project that has ever been on Disney Plus, and it can easily lay claim to being the best thing that Marvel has released probably since, like, everybody says, oh, this is the best thing since Endgame, but honestly, since Infinity War, like, there's a case to be made for that one. And I suppose when season 2 comes around, I think it's coming out next year, something like that, we'll see how much of the credit that the success of season 1 is owed to Beau DeMayo, because from what we're hearing, a lot of season 2 is getting redone, so that's going to be an interesting comparison and contrasting to be done, but that is still months away at this point in time. In the meantime, Beau DeMayo, well, he's kind of going ham, even more so, against the MCU hierarchy. We talked about it last week, about him exposing the higher-ups, and just not even so much that they didn't read the comic books that they were hoping to adapt for any of their projects. It's just they actively hated and derided the source material. It really is a shock as to why so much of Marvel has been absolute slop in recent years, but I digress. Cast your mind back to, just about this time last year, September 4th. Oh, geez, I can't believe we're almost in September. It sucks. The summer has gone by way too quickly, but I have the receipts. Beau DeMayo decries Marvel's criminal, working conditions and goes to court to overturn illegal Disney NDA. Now, we talked about this at the time that it came out, and obviously the way that Beau was handling himself in the lead up to X-Men 97, he's for as much as he's a prominent defender of the comics, he is also very vocal when it comes to certain other extracurricular activities that, I think are best left to his own time when he's not talking about Marvel products. But outside of that, like, he's doing something that people that have been blacklisted in the industry, which he very obviously has been, because Disney doesn't normally, they'll just say, oh yeah, we hope to work with this guy in the future, he was a real sweetheart behind the scenes, and we're looking for new opportunities and so great to work with him. No, they put out a big press release saying he's been fired, he's been shit canned, he packed his shit and he got the fuck out. They've been very forthright with distancing themselves with DeMayo. So he's a guy who has nothing to lose. And as opposed to other people who are still trying to, build bridges and hopefully get work somewhere else, DeMayo is just like, this guy was a hack, this chick is an idiot, I don't know what the fuck that guy was out there doing. And it's great to see. Because this is the type of behind-the-scenes exposés that actually do lead to change. Because when you start naming these names, and you see those names that are attached to projects that are absolute shite, then you can start to connect the dots and go, oh, okay, that's the person that's responsible for this project sucking. Oh, wow, Kevin Feige. You can see where there are certain blind spots in this movie or this show. And what Beau was talking about in that Twitter thread, or that enormous post, actually, that makes sense, and that lines up. Gee, look at the rot that's going on at the MCU. So I have the receipts, and he's been showing them. And his latest expose, well, X-Men 97 creator rips Marvel, horrible meetings, no respect for comics. Yes, he goes even harder on the executives, their hatred of the source material, and the corporate structure that is leading to the stifled creativity coming out of the MCU. So former X-Men showrunner, or X-Men 97 showrunner Beau DeMayo is doubling down on his criticism of Marvel, this time taking aim at the way Marvel Studios runs its creative meetings, and how the process allegedly kills good ideas before they even make it to the screen. In a new Twitter thread, DeMayo contrasted Marvel with DC, explaining why he hasn't been so critical of James Gunn's Superman. Because that's what the shills will do, okay? Instead of, addressing the criticism, the apt criticism of the MCU, they'll just say, oh, what's that DC shill? Oh, you just won't poke holes in Superman. Well, his response to that was very fair. To those asking why I'm not so hard on Superman, the answer is I've never worked with Gunn or DC like it's supposed to be Matt Shankman, and the writers of the Fantastic Four. And I've sat in the creative meetings at Marvel, and they're horrible. He claims that the process revolves around Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige and co-president Lou D'Esposito. That's a summer dance song, so we'll go with D'Esposito, steering pitches towards their own rushed ideas. You basically sit down in a room with Kevin Feige and D'Esposito and try to pitch your movie while also realizing that Kevin just wants you to dictate his rushed thoughts. Oh, shit. That's why so many of these plots for these Marvel films and TV shows very much come across as and then. You've just got this stream of consciousness from a bald-headed, baseball-bedecked idiot. Fantastic. DeMayo adds that former Marvel executive Victoria Alonzo, who is an idiot in and of herself, but she started out fine. She was a good personal assistant to Kevin Feige by all available metrics. It's just the moment she got a little bit more power was the moment that she unironically started to think that, the X-Men was a sexist label and it needs to be reimagined for modern audiences. I wish I was joking. She was also fired, but would sometimes try to lift the mood. In one of my Blade meetings, which, fuck. Okay, so one of those 4 scripts that Kevin Feige recently said about Blade that they've looked at and now they've finally decided on something. I'd imagine it probably sounds something similar to what Kevin Feige wants for a Blade project, but I guess we got word that Beau DeMayo wrote one of these scripts. Interesting. The way that he handled the X-Men. I mean, if he would have had that same type of care and attention for Blade, I mean, I would be down for it. Like, we've heard some of the other pitches, like a 1930 period piece about, the importance of Blade's daughter, or about how, the Daywalker would go ahead and navigate 1960s race relations. Like, oh, fuck, that ought to be great stuff, right? But in one of my Blade meetings, she just showed up with sugar cookies. She brought you sugar cookies? We got sugar cookies, man. She'd bake to help improve morale. Fuck, man, this sucks. According to DeMayo, comic book references were also discouraged. Cool, you're adapting comic books, but you don't want any references. All right. You're even told not to pitch ideas from the comics because Lou isn't a big comic guy, and it'll turn him off. Oh, great, cool. You need to appeal to a guy who hates the comics because you're adapting comic book movies for an audience that likes comic book movies. Do you see the problem? Okay. Instead, he said, the focus is reduced to a vague formula. You sit and you talk about craft and story and characters only to have Kevin and Lou say, yeah, well, all we need to do is make sure that it's fun. We need to follow the Marvel formula. And along the way, it doesn't matter if we have a finished script because we could just go ahead and plus it along the way, because that's the way that we do it at the MCU. He describes the result as a factory process that strips away creativity. Marvel is a slaughterhouse factory, where you watch fresh meat get spoiled as it slowly makes it through the assembly gears of mediocre thinking and this weird hatred for their own product. What a concise and biting bit of commentary for the hierarchy and the corporate structure for the MCU. Mediocre thinkers with a hatred of their own projects. DeMayo would continue to go on and saying that the attitude extends to the comic book writers themselves who created the characters. There's no spark. There's no vision. Marvel is a slaughterhouse factory where you watch the fresh meat get spoiled, blah, blah, blah. This is why Rob Liefeld, isn't just some bitter old man. Yes, talking about the comic book writers is met with open contempt. I had to fight to get the Lewalds involved in X-Men 97, and even then, the dismissive news with which Dana Vasquez Eberhardt, the central subject of last week's video discussing, the open contempt for the comic books. But yes, the head of Animation Studios, if I recall, spoke about them basically telling me the OG creators were meant to be seen and not heard to appease fans. Oh my god. I wanted to co-write an episode with them, and that was Dana's response. But yes, he also said his requests to collaborate with major comic legends, especially within the canon of X-Men, were shut down. I remember wanting to talk to Chris Claremont, the guy responsible for all of those seminal runs that made the X-Men the highest selling comic book run in the 90s. Yeah, that Chris Claremont. And being shut down, or wanting Joan Madura to do posters, just as I was scolded for being too friendly with fans. Yo, that is wild. You're trying to tell an X-Men story. You want to bring in the creators, or at least some of the co-creators, because obviously you can't at this point in time talk to Stan Lee. It'll be a little difficult unless, of course, you have access to an Ouija board. But yeah, Chris Claremont, one of the seminal comic book writers, full stop. Like if you're doing, Daredevil Born Again, proper Daredevil Born Again, and they're trying to slap your hands by trying to talk to, Frank Miller. Or imagine this, right? Like imagine this, like if you're trying to adapt like some high fantasy story and, you got access to the works of, the author or something like that, but then you just want to toss them aside because you got their brain dead grandchild that just wants a free paycheck to just sign off on your project. There wouldn't be a studio on Earth that would be that stupid to do something like that. Now, could there be? Of course not. DeMayo also revealed his early ideas for Blade. And this, like I've heard this before, actually sounds pretty decent, okay? Now which tied into Marvel's Doctor Strange storyline. One of my drafts opened with Deacon Frost tricking some British explorers to trek up to Mount Wundagore, where he does blood magic to reveal the vampire spell used by Varney and his followers during the days of Cull. It starts tying, rather, that should be. It says trying, but it should be tying some of these threads together. I even had the same monsters from Doctor Strange show up and kill the explorers before Deacon reveals he's a vampire and kills them. Up until that point, he had been covered against the cold and daylight. It was set before Doctor Strange 2, so a lot of stuff played ironically, while also having Frost give us more details about Cthulhu, yes, who was only glimpsed in Doctor Strange 2. Yeah, that's a very broad outline, but it's honestly an interesting take on things. I would be interested to see how it would progress. But he says the story would have connected Blade to the Darkhold and Cthulhu, and Feige liked the concept, but others didn't, including Desposito and Mahershala Ali. Wow, he's such a great actor, and we can't do a Blade movie without this fucking overpraised hack. That's just what I think about most actors in Hollywood. Okay, he thought the Jurassic World Rebirth had a fucking exciting script. Bro, come on now. To Kevin's credit, he liked the idea, as well as my pitch, that magic is the Blade with snakes are to Indiana Jones. He hates magic. But then Lou felt it was too comic book, while Mahershala bumped on there being magic in the film tonally. And then I watched as them and Nate Moore, who has been fired, amicably left Marvel, which is so interesting, right? Because he is just an unsuccessful hack. Meanwhile, Beau DeMayo is probably aggressive in his dealings, but he's a guy who knows his stuff and he's quite good at what he does. So yeah, he's a true creative and he doesn't want to compromise on his vision when he realizes that everybody around him doesn't have a vision. But Nate Moore is just simply a producer who worked on a lot of Marvel's black projects, and yeah, he got a glowing send-off when he decided to leave. Was that earlier this year? Yeah. And so of course he was attached to the Blade project. Yes, picked it apart, and we were off to a new draft. And yes, in the end, DeMayo says Marvel's arrogance ruins project 1,000,000%. It's a broken machine, so I can see where Matt Shakman and his team probably had great ideas, only for Marvel's arrogance to destroy them. Yeah, talking about Fantastic Four, and well, we can take a look at how that film is performing. And like Matt's previous dalliance in the MCU, WandaVision, the first couple of episodes, that's what people hold up as either the best live-action stuff that Disney Plus has done, or at least the only tolerable aspects of certain shows on D+. And the same thing with Fantastic Four. That first act, that first 20 minutes before the plot really kicks in, is the most interesting stuff. So yeah, if that's Matt's influence on that, really hope that he gets a little bit more exposure. But the way that Fantastic Four is working out, yeah, I don't really think that he's going to have any more insight. And Kevin Feige and Lou D'Esposito, yeah, they're just going to be getting some new meat into that grinder because, hey, we have more IPs to farm and some more books to pilfer for some shitty ideas that will go on to ruin. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Cosplay. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.